Continuing with our fall series, we are creating a super cute fall sign. We'll be using pencil, watercolor, and pen to create this piece. Beginning with a short round pumpkin, we first start by drawing a sort of like egg shape or large oval, and then some C shapes that connect to it, and then reverse C shapes that connect on the other side. And that will give the illusion of the sections of a pumpkin. And for the stem, you create a triangle with the tip squared off. And right beside it, we are going to draw a slightly taller pumpkin. So we are making a slightly longer egg shape with longer C's attached on either side of it. And of course, because we're going to add watercolor to this afterwards, we want to make sure that our lines are clean. So make sure you use an eraser to clean them up. And then again, we add a triangle that's squared off at the tip at the top of the pumpkin. Now we're going to work on the writing, so think about what you want your sign to say. For my sign, I'm going to write "Hello Pumpkin," and so in the space between the two pumpkins, I'm going to write "Hello" in nice curvy big letters, and then underneath I'm going to do like a script that says "Pumpkin." Now, if you are new to calligraphy or don't know it at all, I recommend finding something online, on Pinterest maybe, and then copying it or printing it out and then tracing it afterwards. And as you're drawing, make sure that you keep your drawing as centered in the page as possible. I noticed that with mine, it was a little bit off-centered, so I'm adding a couple of plants right beside the pumpkins just to give the illusion that it is more centered than it is. That's my secret quick tip that only you will know about this sign that will be in my house. And you know what? No one is going to know if you make this mistake either in your sign as well, because I'm going to show you how to give the illusion that all is well. Think about what color you want your pumpkins to be. I want one of my pumpkins to be white, so I'm going to show you how to create the illusion that the pumpkin is white. Basically, wherever you drew those lines of the egg shape and the C shapes, I'm going over those parts with just a very light, soft blue, and that will give the illusion that the whole pumpkin is white. Because if you notice that on pumpkins or any other thing that's white in real life, there's always going to be some shadows, and the shadows will have colors. You'll notice that with snow or with anything else, so that's why I'm creating the blue outline. And of course, when working with watercolor, you want to start with your lightest colors first. So I'm creating my own green for the plants, and I'm starting with adding the yellow first, and then as the paint is still wet, I'm adding a little bit of blue on top, and that will create a nice soft green. And as the colors bleed together, they will create the illusion of a fluffy, bushy plant. And for the pots that the plants are in, I'm starting with the darkest shade on the outside, just along the rim, and then I'm adding some water to it, just so that way the pots themselves stay a little bit white or a little bit light, and then the color, the darker color, will just bleed into the rest of the pot. And we'll use this same technique when it comes to painting our pumpkin as well. When you add the darker color first and then add some water to it, it allows that color to bleed into the rest of the section that you're working on to create a nice, beautiful gradient. And you'll notice that I'm also using a very small brush to do this. You don't have to, you could use a medium-sized brush, but I like the control that a smaller brush gives me, so keep that in mind as you decide to paint. You'll also notice that I didn't start painting the pumpkin directly beside the first pumpkin because I didn't want those colors to bleed together. Anytime that you paint near a section that is already wet, those colors will bleed together. So with watercolor, it's important to work in sections, leaving space between each section so that it can dry if you don't want the colors to bleed together. So I painted the first pumpkin, and then I moved on to the plants beside the pumpkins, and then I did my second pumpkin. And I decided I wanted the parts between each of the sections of the pumpkin, I don't know what that's called, but I wanted that to be a little bit darker. So I waited a little bit for the first layer of my pumpkin to dry, and then I'm going in with a darker color just around those same shadowy parts and slowly building up those shadows. Now you could also do this when that first layer is still wet, but it will bleed a lot and it might soften those darker parts. So that's why I waited for that first layer to dry a little bit before darkening them up a little bit with a second layer. Now I'm going to take some dark burnt umber or raw sienna, just a brown of some sort, and I'm going to paint the stems of the pumpkins. Well, just for this pumpkin, because I have a different plan for the other pumpkin stem. Now moving on to the letters, you are welcome to use a pen if that is easier. I'm going to use some paint with a fine tip, a very small paintbrush. And because I'm still using watercolor, I'm not going to water down this paint in particular very much. I want it to stay very strong. I want it to stay its bold color of black because I don't really want to go over this several times. I want to get it right that first time. So I'm only adding a little bit of water, just enough to wet the paint and to trace the outline that I made earlier. So now you can see how I've written the word hello a lot better than before. And I'm being intentional to go very slowly as I paint these letters because with watercolor, if you make a mistake, it is a little bit tricky to clean it up. So just make sure that you are super careful, go very slow, and also use a very light hand. And you know what? If you need to go over it several times, that's okay. But yeah, just do your best, be confident with it, and when you're confident with it, it will turn out well. And you know, worst case scenario, you just make the font a little bit thicker, and that's totally fine. Also, feel free to practice on a separate sheet of paper several times even before you try on your final copy. Okay, now here is what I was telling you about for the second stem. I am using a beautiful shimmery gold because that gold stem with the white pumpkin I think just looks so beautiful in real life. So that's what I'm replicating in my sign right now. Your pumpkin can look however you want it to look. You could add polka dots, you could add stripes, it doesn't matter, it's just a painted pumpkin. It could be purple, it could be blue, it's totally up to you. And once all of my watercolor is dry, I can go over it with pen and just add in some little finer details, like some leaves in my plant, or even outlining some of the parts of the pumpkins themselves. You are welcome to do the same or leave the sign completely as is with just the watercolor. And I decided that I wanted my plant pots to actually be wicker baskets. So I'm giving the illusion by just doing a couple of hashtag signs at the bottom and at the top of the pot, just to give the illusion that it is a woven basket. And that's how to create a very cute fall sign. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment of what you want to see next. Thanks for watching.